Way to a Wonderful Life radio message this week is titled Dominant Mind. The title is Dominant Mind, and it's taken from a 1974 book written by the great Dr. Robert Bitzer, who was a master of mental science, science of mind, the law of mind, and the book is titled Dominant Mind. And Dr. Bitzer was my first teacher in this philosophy, and so I give great credibility to him because he was a master teacher. He understood the way the law of mind works. He built a church on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, one of the most expensive areas of Los Angeles, and some people call it Hollywood. And he paid for that church in 8 years. So this is called Dominant Mind by Dr. Robert Bitzer, and we're going to go through it with some ad-libs here and some ad-libs there. You know how that goes. We'll make sure we get this lesson. He says, how are you being dominated? How do you handle domination? How are you being dominated? This question may make you bristle because your instant reaction is, nothing dominates me. I am free. I am independent. No one has any control over me at all. You may not realize it, but nevertheless, you are dominated. Perhaps by people, perhaps by things, perhaps by thoughts. Life is choice, and you always choose the level on which you function and are subject to beliefs dominating that level. Now, this is a very interesting thing that he's given us here, because we all know and we accept and we believe that the subconscious mind, which is the mind that we're not conscious of during the day, that part of the subconscious that delves into our consciousness, is always directing us, guiding us, giving us the ideas, the guidance that we choose things for. And so we know that Dr. Bitzer is talking about that deeper mind, not our conscious mind that sees things and allows ourselves to be influenced by the events going around us, but that deeper mind that knows the truth, but doesn't always follow the truth that we know, because our conscious mind will choose something so very different than what it is that we know is the truth. So we must understand right where we are that we're dealing with that consciousness. And the consciousness is made up of our choices, not only the actions that we take, the choices that we make in our conscious mind, but also the choices we make in our deeper mind. So he tells us, do not depend upon person, place, or thing. What you depend on will dominate you because your belief gives it that power. The crass materialist is dominated by things. Material possessions have a dominating hold on him because he operates from a material point of view. They possess him. There are numerous other examples of people being dominated by things. For instance, we've all known someone who has a beautiful house. The person puts everything that is their all into this house. They buy only the best furniture, the best carpeting, the very best of everything for their house. They are so extremely careful with their possessions that people feel very uncomfortable in their home. They would rather not visit them, and they, in turn, are so worried the visitors will break something, track up the carpets, or steal something, that they would prefer not entertaining people in their house. So they fall into the syndrome of having few friends and not being asked anywhere by anyone. Their house and possessions become a dominating force in separating them from others. What is a home anyhow? A home is a house that exudes the consciousness of joyous living. Without love and happiness and people, a house becomes a structure composed of different materials, nothing more. The materialist does not have the consciousness of being superior to all material possessions, and the person is really left with the house, the structure, and the things inside it, and nothing more. So many things in our life dominate us. So many people allow things to dominate them. So he tells us, don't let your clothes wear you. Another example of this is a person who is dominated by clothes. The bondage to things must be broken. Some people develop a compulsion to buy clothes at the slightest pretext. They would, if possible, wear something different every time they left the house. They become so overpowered and impressed by their clothes that the real person is submerged underneath. They become unhappy mannequins, wondering why they aren't invited more places, have more friends, and aren't happier. Along the same line, some people are in bondage to their best clothes. They don't wear them because they want them to always look as if they're new. They should realize that styles change, and by the time they wear these clothes several times, they are out of vogue anyway. This is domination of things. Things should be used by us. Our very best clothes should be worn and enjoyed and replaced with new ones when we so desire. We should not have to have a suit fall apart before we can get a new one. Our thought must dominate our environment and cause things to be used as we want them to be used. Because we live only in consciousness. We live only in consciousness. I want to keep repeating that. We live only in consciousness. So as we go through these words from Dr. Bitzer, let's remind ourselves. We live only in consciousness. We are not our homes and we are not our clothes. We are something much more important than either of these. There are countless examples of being dominated by material things, so many examples that most of us have been guilty of this type of domination at one time or another in our lives. Perhaps many remember the old family parlor that was too good to be used except for important visitors or weddings or for corpses to lie in state. Every room in one's house should be used and enjoyed fully. Remember how people used to put seat covers to protect the upholstery and floor mats to protect the carpeting when they bought new cars? The entire life of the car which they enjoyed was spent sitting on seat covers and floor mats in order that the car could be sold to people who would take off the seat covers and floor mats and enjoy the upholstery and the rug. This is domination. You should enjoy everything about your possessions, not save them for someone else. So he tells us, use all that you have. Many times students do not like to underline pertinent parts of their textbooks because they think this decreases their resale value. The book and its price dominates them from getting as much out of the study as they should. Use your textbooks. Make them work for you instead of you working for them. Some people never use their silverware or good china. These material possessions dominate them, so they protect the silver and the dishes. A person who is conscious of his divine reality knows that nothing in this world is too good for them to use and enjoy. You are appreciated and you are loved. Can you believe that you are? You are appreciated and you are loved. Let's say, I am appreciated and I am loved, and believe it about ourselves. Believe it about ourselves. Sometimes people are dominated by a belief in being unappreciated. No matter what happens, they always turn it around so that they are placed in an unfavorable light. For instance, if someone should happen to give them a gift, they would look for an ulterior motive. A person that believes in his insufficiency will be dominated by that belief. And the belief that dominates them is able to produce experiences to justify itself. There is a person who relies upon alcohol or drugs for their escape from reality or their lack of courage. All of these things are things that dominate many of us. We all have different levels of unfoldment. If the above-mentioned examples fit you or someone you know, you must realize that that is the level of awareness where you are, and each one of us functions at the level where we are right now. However, anyone can change his or her level. The purpose of life is growth through understanding, and there should be a constant evolving. You outgrow things because you come into a new awareness, a new consciousness of who you really are. Perhaps at one time you could identify every make of automobile and every detail about each model, including all specifics and costs, everything. Or perhaps you knew all the songs in the top 10 of the hit parade, what performer recorded them and on what record company they recorded. How many of today's top 10 could you name? How many makes of cars do you know? New interests bring new aliveness. New interests bring new aliveness. As you progress in life, your interest changes. The thoughts that dominated you yesterday no longer have appeal to you. You rise above the former interests, they become obsolete. While the goal of life is for mankind to attain self-realization, this does not make everything in his outward expression unimportant. As we evolve, the level of our material world should rise with the new consciousness. Judge Troward, in listing the active attributes of originating spirit, includes beauty and joy. The attributes of originating spirit. Now, originating spirit is that thing we call God, for lack of a better word. He includes beauty and joy, because we project what we are as our environment. Since our outer world is a reflection of our thought, it will correspond to our thinking. Beautiful people live in a beautiful world. Freedom of consciousness establishes freedom in relationships. It would only seem right for the awakened individual to surround themselves with as much beauty and joy as possible. The environment dominates an individual only when they give the creative cause to things and conditions. To be well-groomed does not mean that a person is vain or that they are dominated by their environment. However, it could be used as a form of domination. Perhaps many people who try to see how carelessly they can dress actually are subconsciously dominated by clothes. This apathetic attitude could be a protest in their mind against a belief in being dominated by traditional society. Sometimes they deliberately and carelessly dresser is dominated by a belief in insecurity. They want to hide in their shabbiness, I guess. They want people to like them for themselves, they'll say, and not for the way in which they dress or the way in which they act. This immaturity is based on feeling insecure. This is ineffectual, for we know in this philosophy that everything is revealed in our outer world does not conform, that always reveals that our outer world does conform to our inner world. In other words, as within, so without. Dr. Bitzer doesn't say that, but as within, so without. As a man thinketh, or as a person thinketh, so they are. Dirt and disorder in our appearance or our homes is only the outpicturing of states of mind. The individual that recognizes their oneness with the one creative spirit and knows that they are a creative center, and that consciousness would permit nothing in their environment that would be offensive. Beauty would be inevitable. So think about those things that Troward tells us. Beauty and joy is part of the originating spirit. And so we must see more beauty and feel more joy. These are the gifts of the Spirit, the gift of seeing things that are beautiful, feeling beautiful. That doesn't mean based on, Vogue magazine beauty or Gentleman's Quarterly beauty, but based on the feeling of being beautiful, of feeling the beauty within our own soul of who we are, what we're about, feeling the joy of being alive. Those are the things we want to focus on. So let's go back to Dr. Bitzer. Compulsive self-depreciation. This is one of the key things that harm so many of us, and so many people are not conscious of it. Self-depreciation. So let's see what he says. He says the same concept many times is applied to overweight. A person who feels insecure or unsure of himself also wants people to love him for what he is, and so he affirms. If he does not secure the affection and esteem of people, he can blame it on one thing, his extra poundage. He is not dominated by a thought of overweight. He is dominated by a thought of insecurity. It is easy to drop weight when a person understands this. He should build up an awareness of self-esteem. He should change his immature concept of himself. When he comes into the full realization, he reverses this attitude toward people. Instead of craving their affection and adulation, which takes the form of an insatiable appetite or compulsive eating, he recognizes that he must and can express himself, that what he is conscious of being must be released by him into his environment. Instead of self-adulation, he respects others and appreciates others. He learns to give affection, to give love, to be considerate of other people. The tendency to be self-centered is completely reversed. He releases as much of his power as he can. Isn't that amazing? So your belief, not people, dominates you. Your belief, not people, dominates you. Because in addition to being dominated by things, some people are dominated by other people. Do you discuss the habits of people? Do you wonder why they act the way they do? Do you talk about the way certain people dress? Why people gossip the way they do? All of this is thinking in terms of people. One possesses a poverty of the intellect if they have to spend their time discussing personality. We gossip about people in our world because in our feelings of inadequacy, the gossip makes us feel superior. This is a sad reflection. It simply means that we are not secure in the knowledge of who we really are. This, too, is an instance of immaturity. So learn to govern yourself. What is there in your thinking or acting that causes or permits domination? Does it seem to fulfill a need in your life? Do you feel that you need someone on whom to lean? Do you need someone to lean on you? Why do you feel this way? These are questions we must ask ourselves. Go into our mind and ask ourselves, why do I do this? Why do I think this? Why do I believe this? That asking the question to ourselves, to our deeper mind. Get in the stillness and ask the question to your deeper mind. If you feel dominated by something, if you feel that you're just not feeling the joy of life, then that means there's something that's dominating your mind, it's dominating your spirit. So we must find out what it is and correct it. So he tells us, keep out of other people's arguments. Perhaps you have found yourself caught in personal relationships. A couple decide to get a divorce. Some of their acquaintances probably remark that they should not have gotten married in the first place. Some couples do separate, but 2 weeks later, they are back together. Then on the other hand, they may separate again and even possibly obtain a divorce. This pattern of instability is a result of each one being dominated by their personal ideas. Each one reacts with fire to the personality of the other, and the fur may fly because they are operating purely from the personal level. Don't let yourself become involved. Advice should be given only when it is solicited. Otherwise, we find that we put ourselves on a pedestal as a paragon of all wisdom and virtue, which means we are merely being dominated by others' problems and interests. We should never advise a person to get a divorce, nor to stay married. Likewise, we do not advise a person to get married or to stay single. Along the same lines, you see two friends quarrel. They disagree and really have a go at one another. They may tear each other limb from limb, but shortly afterwards they will again be friends as if nothing disagreeable had taken place. People don't stay angry long. They get over it. People get their feelings hurt, and the more personal they are, the more apt they are to get hurt. When you come out of the world of the purely personal and give each person their complete freedom, you function at a level where relationships can be harmonious and where understanding can be perfect. Work in the realm of thought and ideas and leave others free to make up their own minds. In this way, your being dominated by other people will cease. Don't try to dictate subconsciously. You always must recognize a great problem in life may be an inner desire to dominate others. Let's go back and read that again. You also must recognize a great problem in life may be an inner desire to dominate others. This is not always overt domination. Many times it is very subtle. A grave peril in life is this innate desire to dominate. We falsely assume our unsolicited criticism is for another person's benefit. We will not readily admit that unconsciously we are trying to run somebody's we are trying to run someone else's life. Wherever your thought goes out and tries consciously or unconsciously to dictate, you have to recognize you are becoming involved in a dangerous conflict of personality. Perhaps you feel a person should dress and act in a certain manner. You criticize their personal habits. Haven't you heard? You would certainly think with all the money she makes she could wear better clothes than those. Or look at him at his age. He's trying to dress like a teenager. Or possibly, I don't know what gets into him. Every time I take him somewhere, he just embarrasses me to death. All of these may be mild forms of attempted domination. It can be very subtle, and many people, in varying degrees, indulge in this form of domination. When you dictate to others, you are in a consciousness of dictation and are going to bring back to yourself dictation from other people. It is the way in which the law works. If you want freedom from others, you must give it to others. Difficult as it sometimes seems, you have to leave a person alone to be just exactly what he or she wants to be. This takes great courage. It also demands great insight and faith. It also requires that you rid yourself of your own Messiah complex. You are not the Savior of the world. It is hard to realize it, but you are not. The clinging vine type of attitude became passé long before women's liberation became accepted. Likewise, throughout history, wise parents have taught their children the right kind of self-dependence. They knew that personal responsibility is a requisite for maturity. Each person is an individual and learns to maintain right relationships with others. They never lean upon them, nor permit them to lean upon them. Too much concern over helping others can reflect a lack of personal self-esteem. This is only furthered when an individual tries to dominate others, whether it be consciously or unconsciously. Do not confuse your adult responsibility for your personal life and your relationships with any attempt to dominate others. We are not stronger because we dominate or try to influence others. Quite the contrary. This only emphasizes our inner insecurity, for we seem unable to direct our everyday energies toward our own lives and end up directing it towards others. Remember, greatness comes through personal self-government. Greatness comes through personal self-government. Everyone must remind themselves of this. Very, very important. Dr. Bitzer tells us everyone is one with the infinite. Therefore, you come to the realization that you are one in the one mind and that every person has access to that one mind and to the life and presence of God, for lack of a better word. Each person has available to themselves all the infinite intelligence and power of the divine, of the spirit. A belief in domination can cause us to be bossy, or it can cause someone to boss us. Domination is a two-way street. No one can be dominated unless there is some kind of desire, or at least a tendency, or willingness to be dominated. Some people are leaners and seem to feel they need someone to make decisions for them. But no one can make up your mind for you. Even when you find you are doing something you were told to do, if your heart isn't in it, If it doesn't find inner emphasis within you, it will never be a complete demonstration. You have to do things because of your conscious choice, not because you are being forced to do something. So we want to guide but not smother. Why would a child want to be dominated by his parents? If it is not partly because the parent didn't teach the child self-dependence. Sincere guidance and protection can so easily develop a sense of overprotectiveness. Be careful how you think for others. One little boy said, "Mommy and Daddy fight all the time, so why shouldn't Johnny and I fight too?" When they are brought up in an atmosphere of bickering and arguing, how can children avoid fighting? When children are brought up in an atmosphere of poverty or penny pinching, is it any wonder that we have created a consciousness of poverty in the world? Parents must realize the importance they have in instilling ideas that develop into confident and courageous actions in their children. Think back about your childhood. Do you recognize patterns of limitation or domination that your parents instilled in you? Get rid of them. All people must function freely, and we must recognize this. The problems today among our youth necessitate a complete change in the attitudes and methods used by the adult community. The adults should recognize that something in the youth's basic training and what he or she has been taught has created the present condition. We adults and parents, and only we, can change these conditions. Perhaps it is a reflex action that causes the child in later life to attempt to dominate his parents. The child whose goal is to be like his or her parents is dominated by that false desire. The person whose desire is to please mother and father is dominated by a belief that he or she is depending on them. They need their approbation, or so they think. Their life pattern must develop on its own. Many marriages are impotent because of the domination of an overpowering spouse. Mutual respect is essential. In the same way, parents can help their child find themselves to be themselves. The parents must do the weaning. The parents, not the child, cut the umbilical cord. When we know the truth about ourselves, we create good experiences which are right. They are harmonious, joyous, and they bring things together in a constructive way. We grow away from the domination of people and by people. We get out of the realm of the personal and commence to realize that we are mind and that we are one with the infinite mind. The God in you meets the God in others. All meet in the oneness of being. There is just one mind, one God, one life. We are that one life knowing its own conscious being as complete within us. And that's the truth for you and the truth for me and the truth for everyone. And so it is. Amen.